Welcome to the Cathedral Church of St Marie in Sheffield, and this guide which follows the Edible England theme of the 2021 Heritage Open Days celebration, England's largest festival of history and culture. This year's Heritage Open Days festival runs from September the 10th to September the 16th, but the works of art and features mentioned in this guide can be seen all year round, so remain relevant whenever your visit takes place. If you are listening to this guide in the church, please avoid disturbing others by using headphones, and please do not tour the church while services are in progress. Food and drink play a central role in many religions. They are symbols of life, a focus for celebration and thanksgiving, and a focal point bringing the faithful together around a communal table. What we eat and drink can also become an act of faith. That could be through the observance of dietary laws, which may ban the consumption of some foods and drinks, such as pork, beef, and alcohol. It might also be through abstinence from certain foods and fasting during holy periods, such as Lent or Ramadan. It can also be through the consumption of specific foods, recipes or menus, eaten in memory of religiously significant events, such as the Passover for Jewish people and the Last Supper for Christians. Above all, in Christianity, food and drink act as a direct physical communion with our Creator in the person of Jesus Christ. For Catholics, the communal table is the altar. The food is the bread which becomes the body of Christ, while the drink is wine which becomes his blood, and water which flowed from his side along with blood following his death on the cross. Most of the images relating to food and drink that you will find in the cathedral concern bread or wine, or their key ingredients, wheat and grapes. However, it doesn't stop there. You will also find images of pomegranates, fish, scallop shells, vine leaves and acorns, all of which can be used as food. Let's start with the stuff of life, bread and wine, and the wheat and grapes they are made from. The first thing you see when you enter the church is the baptismal font and the nave stretching towards the sanctuary and east window. If you walk a little way down the nave and turn, you will see the great west window, which was donated to the cathedral for its opening in 1850 by Lady Augusta Mary Catherine Minner, the mother of the 15th Duke of Norfolk and Countess of Arundel and Surrey, to whom you will find a dedication at the bottom of the window. The west window was designed by the renowned English architect, designer, artist and critic Augustus Welby Pugin, and made by Hardman & Co., one of the world's leading manufacturers of stained glass and ecclesiastical fittings in the mid-1800s. St Marie's west window is what is known as a typological window, because it links events from the Bible's Old Testament with events during the life of Jesus Christ, recorded in the New Testament. The two panels to the left of the second row from the top of the main part of the window explore the concept of priesthood and the offering to God, or sacrifice, of bread and wine in thanksgiving. The scene on the left focuses on an encounter in Genesis between the father of the Jewish and Christian faiths, Abraham, and the enigmatic Old Testament character Melchizedek. Melchizedek is seen as a model for Christ. His bringing of bread and wine and blessing of Abraham is seen as prefiguring Christ's blessing of bread and wine at the Last Supper to institute the Christian Eucharist, a Greek word meaning thanksgiving, which is shown in the sister panel. As Matthew describes in his Gospel, while they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." Immediately below these two panels are two panels emphasizing the importance of water for physical and spiritual life. The panel on the left illustrates a story from the Old Testament book of Exodus. After escaping slavery in Egypt, the Israelites wandered in the desert for many years. During their wanderings, they complained to Moses that they and their livestock were dying of thirst. God told Moses to strike a rock with his staff, and, when he did, water flowed out of it, allowing the Israelites to drink their fill. The panel to the right, meanwhile, shows a soldier piercing Jesus' side with a spear to show that he was indeed dead, causing water and blood to flow out. Blood and water provide a direct link to two sacraments, the Eucharist and baptism. St. Paul provides a further link illustrated in these panels in his first letter to the Corinthians, when he writes, "They all ate the same spiritual food and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ." Last of all, look at the apex of the window. At the bottom on the left, you will find a personification of peace, crowned and carrying the bread and wine of the Eucharist, opposite justice, blindfolded and carrying the tablets of the law. To the right of St. Marie's mortuary chapel, you can see the main body of the chapel with its altar and reredos carved by Johann Petz, the Austrian-born sculptor who lived from 1818 to 1880, setting up his own sculpture workshop in Munich. Directly in front is an icon depicting the Virgin Mary as Our Lady of Perpetual Mercy, together with her Son, Jesus Christ. To the left, in the west wall of the chapel, you will find two stained glass windows depicting Saints Elizabeth of Hungary and Mary Magdalene, given to the church by Mary Ellison and Elizabeth Wake for its opening in 1850. Both the Ellisons and the Wakes were prominent local Catholic families, acting respectively as agents for the Dukes of Norfolk and leading solicitors. Saint Elizabeth carries flowers in her apron, miraculously transformed from loaves which she secretly was taking to the poor. Elizabeth lived in the 12th century and is said to have spent enormous sums on almsgiving, founding hospitals and setting up homes for orphans, to the anger of some members of the court. Several versions exist of the legend of St. Elizabeth and the loaves. All agree that, fearing a reprimand when challenged by her opponents to say what she had hidden under her cloak, she told them she was carrying roses. When she was forced to open the cloak, the food was miraculously transformed into roses. Following the death of her husband, King Ludwig, Elizabeth was thrown out of the court by her brother-in-law and was exiled. Elizabeth became a lay member of the Franciscans, living a life of poverty but still working for the poor, this time by cleaning the houses of the elderly. She later refused an offer to return to court and died among those she served in hardship and poverty. Turn to look at the main window in the north transept. The window is dedicated to Michael Ellison, who became the Duke of Norfolk's land agent in Worksop and Sheffield, and was the father of Michael Joseph Ellison. In addition to following his father by becoming the Duke of Norfolk's agent in Sheffield, M.J. Ellison played a key role in the life of Sheffield. He was a director of the newly formed Sheffield Banking Company, a first-class cricketer and one of the founders of Yorkshire Cricket Club, becoming its first treasurer and soon afterwards its president. M.J. Ellison was instrumental in persuading the Duke of Norfolk to let Sheffield Cricket Club rent land on Bramall Lane, and until his death in 1898 paid the rent for that land, £70 a year at the time, which is the equivalent of £7,960 in today's money. Ellison was a playing member of the world's oldest football club, Sheffield Football Club, and became Sheffield United's first chairman in 1889, holding the post until his death. The window, dedicated to his father, who died in 1861, contains another image of St. Elizabeth of Hungary in its third panel, once again revealing the bread turned to roses in her cloak. Also depicted in the window are St. Thomas Villanova, the Archangel Michael, and St. Mary Magdalene. To the right of the window you will find a shrine dedicated to the Madonna and Child, with a limewood statue that is another example of the work of Johann Petz, the sculptor of the Reredos in the mortuary chapel. Just to the right of the Madonna and Child shrine you will find the Blessed Sacrament Chapel. The Blessed Sacrament Chapel is one of the holiest places in the cathedral and is reserved for private prayer. We would respectfully ask you to view the features without entering the chapel itself. The most evocative panel in the chapel, and arguably the whole of the church, can be found in the centre of the chapel's east window. The panel shows Christ holding a chalice with the host, a disk of unleavened bread that becomes his body, just as the wine in the chalice becomes his blood on consecration during the celebration of Mass. Immediately beneath this panel you will find another representation of the Last Supper, which we first met in the west window. Look up at the roof of the Blessed Sacrament Chapel and you will see bosses depicting sheaves of wheat, bunches of grapes and chalices. To the right of the Blessed Sacrament Chapel is the sanctuary, another of the most holy parts of the church, with the high altar in the centre and Bishop's throne, known as a cathedra, behind it. Look up at the angels in the roof of the sanctuary. You will see that the angels are themselves celebrating the Mass, holding amongst other sacred items a chalice or deep cup containing wine, and a ciborium, a similar shaped receptacle for unleavened bread. The angels were designed by the Catholic artist Henry Taylor Bulmer and carved by Arthur Hable, whose father Thomas was the contractor for all the carpentry in St. Mary's, a contract worth £1,870 in 1850, or more than £250,000 in today's money. Arthur Hable started carving as a child while convalescing after breaking his leg. He trained at Sheffield School of Design and became the school's Master of Wood Carving in 1875. His skills were such that the year after the cathedral opened, he won a gold medal at the Great Exhibition for an 8-foot-high, 4-foot-wide walnut cabinet made in the Italian style to his own design. Arthur's youngest daughter Clara later became a skilled carver and married Sheffield artist William Keeling. The organ case was designed by John Francis Bentley, a Victorian architect who came from Doncaster and became best known for designing Westminster Cathedral. The case was carved from Austrian oak by James Erskine Knox, who later became Bentley's assistant when Bentley was working on Westminster Cathedral. Look above the columns where the organist sits and you will see a series of carvings of pomegranates, around 20 in all, each one different from the other. You will find more pomegranates in the St. Joseph Chapel, to the right of the sanctuary. The St. Joseph Chapel is also known as the Norfolk Chapel and is dedicated to the family of the Dukes of Norfolk, the leading Catholic nobles of England. The Dukes somehow maintained their Catholic faith and their position in English society in the face of persecution during the Reformation, under most notably the reigns of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, and they were major donors to St. Mary's. The right-hand wall of the chapel contains tiling images of 6 female saints, all virgins and 5 of them martyrs. The saint in the second tiled niche from the left is St. Barbara. She carries a palm frond, a symbol of martyrdom, and you will find pomegranates in the background. Pomegranates can signify a number of Christian concepts. The seeds bursting out of a pomegranate are likened to Christ bursting out of the tomb after his crucifixion. So the fruit represents resurrection and the promise of eternal life. The pomegranate's numerous seeds can also represent the Church, unity in faith, and a community of believers. Pomegranates appear in depictions of the Virgin Mary as Mother of the Church, and can also symbolize royalty. Some of the symbolism harks back to the ancient myth of Proserpina, or Persephone, the Roman goddess of fertility, wine, and agriculture, who was abducted by the god of the underworld and forced to live with him for 6 months of every year after eating 6 pomegranate seeds during her stay in the underworld. Legend has it that St. Barbara was the daughter of a rich pagan who tried to kill her after she became a Christian. She was taken before the prefect of the province where she lived, and every night, after being tortured, her wounds miraculously healed. Eventually, she was condemned to be beheaded. Her father carried out the sentence and was then struck by lightning and burnt to death as he returned home. St. Barbara's Day is celebrated by Arab Christians on December the 4th, with a feast where attendees eat a traditional dish called berbera, made from boiled barley, pomegranate seeds, raisins, anise, and sugar. Pomegranate seeds are used in both sweet and savoury dishes, ranging from pomegranate chicken, almond couscous, and an Indian snack called cauliflower chaat, to cheesecakes and ice creams. Pomegranates are also used to make fruit drinks and are the main constituent of grenadine, which is used to flavour cocktails. To St. Barbara's right is the image of St. Dorothy, who was martyred in the year 313 at Caesarea in Cappadocia, Turkey nowadays. She was martyred during the great persecution of the Roman Emperor Diocletian. Dorothy was executed because she refused to worship idols and because she would not give up her consecrated virginity. Legend has it that a man called Theophilus jeered at her from the crowd as she was on the way to her execution, asking her to send him produce from this garden of paradise she was supposed to be going to. Dorothy agreed, and just before being executed prayed for him. A messenger from God is said to have appeared and given Theophilus a basket containing apples and roses, after which Theophilus became a Christian and was later martyred himself. As you can see, the tiny image in the St. Joseph Chapel shows St. Dorothy holding a basket containing apples and roses. Behind the saint you can see a design of apple and rose tree branches, as if she is standing in that garden of paradise about which she was mocked. Pillars on either side of the point where the south transept meets the south aisle bear stone carvings of a grape-laden vine and an oak heavy with acorns. In addition to providing food and drink, the vine itself represents the growth of the church. John's Gospel quotes Jesus as saying, "I am the vine," before going on to explain how God tends Christ's church to encourage its growth. Grapes symbolize abundance, prosperity, and fertility, but above all, Christ's blood received during the Mass in the form of wine. Oaks and acorns are also symbols of growth, again specifically the growth of the church. Although acorns are not commonly seen as a food for human beings, they are packed with healthy fats, vitamins, minerals, and plant compounds, and are good sources of vitamins A and E. Acorns also contain poisonous and bitter tannins, so they must be broken up and soaked to remove the poisons, after which they can be roasted and eaten, turned into a flour or meal that can be used to make a porridge, or used to produce acorn milk and coffee. Many of the windows in St. Marie's have depictions of grapes, vines, and vine leaves. Of course, grapes can be eaten raw, turned into jams, jellies, and sorbets, and of course wine. Meanwhile, their leaves have long been used in Mediterranean countries as an edible packaging for rice, meat, fish, vegetables, and cheeses. Look at the window commemorating the life of St. William of York, and the neighbouring window depicting Our Lady of Sorrows. The William of York window was erected in memory of Father William Parsons. Father Parsons succeeded Father Charles Pratt, who had launched the construction of St. Marie's, but died a year before the church was completed. Charles Hadfield, the son of St. Marie's architect Matthew Ellison Hadfield, described Father Parsons as a man of some taste and large ideas. Father Pratt had held back from committing to the erection of St. Marie's spire because of lack of funds, but Father Parsons pressed ahead with that and other initiatives, including the panelling of the nave ceiling at a cost of £180, or £25,000 in today's money. Although the panelling improved the acoustic properties of the church at what was seen as a moderate cost, Father Parsons' tenure was not seen as a success. According to Charles Hadfield, had Father Pratt not died and been replaced by Father Parsons, the church would not have accrued the heavy debts which left it in, to quote him, formidable financial difficulty. Father Parsons' tenure at St. Mary's ended after less than a year, but his legacy includes the William of York window, whose design features vines, leaves, a chalice and host, and oak trees with acorns. William of York lived in the 12th century and is thought to be related to King Stephen, who helped him become Archbishop of York. William was opposed by the Cistercian monastic order and was deposed as Archbishop following the election of the Cistercian Pope Eugene III in 1145. He became Archbishop of York for the second time following Eugene's death in 1153, but died a year later, after, it was rumoured, someone slipped poison into the chalice with which he was celebrating Mass. Miracles began to be reported as taking place at William's tomb in 1177, and he was canonised in 1226. The neighbouring Our Lady of Sorrows window shows the Virgin Mary between St. Teresa and St. Helen, and has a profusion of vines, bunches of grapes and vine leaves. It was given to the church by William and Margaret Cadman in memory of their daughters Helena and Teresa. William and Margaret were major donors to Catholic causes in the area. William's grandfather, Peter Cadman, had been a merchant and table knife manufacturer operating out of Norfolk Street, the road which runs along the bottom of where the church now stands. The business had ceased to exist by the 1840s, by which time William and his elder brother, also called Peter, were gentlemen farmers. William married Mary Smelter, who is likely to have been the daughter of one of 3 well-to-do Catholics who acquired the land on which the cathedral now stands from the then Duke of Norfolk. William and Mary had at least 10 children, including Helena and Teresa. The twins were born in 1852, 2 years after St. Marie was completed, and died at the age of 7 from scarlatina maligna, a severe and usually fatal form of scarlet fever that was a leading cause of death among children before antibiotics were discovered. All the saints depicted in the headstops on the right-hand side of the nave, as you face the sanctuary, are male, while those on the left are female. The saint above the second pillar on the male side of the nave is St. Roch, who has a scallop shell on his hat. St. Roch is depicted as a pilgrim. The scallop shell is traditionally worn by pilgrims taking part in the Camino, a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, where tradition holds that the remains of the apostle St. James the Great were buried in the cathedral there. St. Roch was born in France in the 14th century, but travelled to northern Italy, where he cared for plague victims. Legend has it that he retreated to a forest after becoming victim to the plague himself, and that he was looked after by a dog in the forest who brought him bread and licked the plague sore on his thigh until the saint recovered. Close by, in the bookshop under St. Mary's bell tower, the former site of St. Mary's baptistry, you can see a window depicting the baptism of Christ. The window's left-hand panel shows St. Simon the Zealot, one of the lesser known of Jesus' 12 apostles, holding a fish. According to tradition, Simon and another apostle, Jude, who is shown in the right-hand panel, introduced Christianity to Persia, now Iran, and other parts of the region. The fish symbolises Simon's role as a fisher of men, or gatherer of believers, which is taken from the Gospel of Luke. However, Simon the Zealot should not be confused with his fellow apostle Simon Peter, whose occupation before he followed Christ was, coincidentally, as a fisherman. And indeed it was Simon Peter, rather than Simon the Zealot, who Christ originally urged to follow him and become a fisher of men. This window commemorates the 40th anniversary of the marriage of John Bernasconi and Lavinia Thorpe, members of two families that were among the major donors to St. Marie's. The Bernasconis came from Switzerland and established an opticians, cutlery and hardware business in Waingate. John was the last person to run the family firm, which ceased to trade after he retired. Following his death, Lavinia gave the angel carved from alabaster, which is on the right-hand column at the entrance to the St. Joseph Chapel. Lavinia's family, the Thorpes, established a confectionery and cake business in Fargate, which later grew to incorporate a restaurant, grill room and tea rooms, in addition to providing catering for events and delivering cakes, confectionery and other food products to homes across the Sheffield area. Lavinia donated the window to the right of the Great West Window in memory of her mother Jane. Jane in turn had donated the Guardian Angel's window to the left of the door in the north aisle, and paid for the Sacred Heart Shrine in the north transept, which cost a total of £300 or £40,650 in today's money. You have now reached the end of your tour. We hope you have enjoyed your time in the cathedral. You can find more information about the artworks in St. Marie's and details of other tours in the Visit Us section of the St. Marie's website.